Rhys Paddick, welcome to the Plant Yourself podcast.
Thank you so much, Howie. Lovely to be here.
Great. So well, tell us about you. I could do a bad job, but I think you could do a good job.
It's always a cool question. Hey, who am I? And my brain is always like, do I give you the LinkedIn bio or the Instagram bio, or do I give you like what version of that do I give you? I'll give you like the overview. I'm Rhys. I am born and bred in Perth, Western Australia. So this is in the southwest of Western Australia. I'm someone who walks two worlds. So I've got Aboriginal heritage through my mum's side of the family, and I've got Australian white heritage through my father's side of the family. And I'm someone who's always been interested in culture, right? So when we're growing up, I'm interested to see how cultures intersect and how we, as a people, have this sort of collective agreements and understandings and how we all work together. And with Australia and Australia's history, the Aboriginal peoples of Australia and the white Australians have always had quite a complex relationship. And this is why I really enjoy what I do, which is like I work in culture change. So I go into places and I teach people how to get off scripts, and I use traditional Aboriginal ways of knowing and being. And I sort of translate it into like the modern world, how modern people can understand it, so that people can sort of make their own choices and decisions, and also realize that they're a part of the system, they're a part of nature, they're a part of, they've got intrinsic connections to each other and the planet. So I've always been interested in these sort of topics. I've built my own business around this. So I have been operating for about 6 years in this space, in the business world. And I also have a whole bunch of other passions. Howie, I can talk about how I love to dance, how I love to sing, I'm a bit of a green thumb at the moment. There's a lot of who I am, but essentially that's what I do, and that's a little bit about, how I fit into this space.
Great. So I think that gives us a good starting point, and I hope we'll get into dance and gardening and singing because. Um, I guess the thing that first drew me to wanting to talk to you was that one of the commercial offerings you take to the world is a different way to do acknowledgement of country, and I think Australians understand this. Um, I think much of the rest of the world doesn't. So in the U.S., if someone does an acknowledgement of I'm on they start as keynote, I acknowledge that I'm on unceded land of such and such. It feels weird and very sort of leftist hippie. I think in Australia, it's much more uh, integrated into sort of mainstream society. Can you just talk about in general like what that is?
Yeah, this is my topic of expertise. So how I can talk about this in depth forever, just so you know. So you just got to wheel me back in if I get a little bit too crazy, all right? Because this is all I ever talk about. All right. So acknowledgements of country is the topic of discussion, right? And what is an acknowledgement of country? Well, it's just an acknowledgement of people and place. Now, in Australia, it's a phenomenon which kind of emerged around 2005. It just sort of started around in schools. I remember receiving it in my assembly and that kind of thing. And most people weren't really given context as to what it is, other than the words that they were hearing. And the words that they're hearing on these scripts were, we like to pay respects to the traditional custodians, and in this case, Wajak Noongar, or go to a different place, they would insert that clan name there, and it was sort of this established as this like a pocket ritual, like this little thing that we did to honor the custodians and the people of that place. So on the outside, that's a respectful thing. So most people were like, oh yeah, that's just a thing that we do. And then over time, it becomes more popularized, and people start inserting it into their, their team meetings every Thursday at 9 a.m. and at the bottom of emails. And what's happening is now we're in an interesting position where everybody sort of understands that, on the outside, the acknowledgement of country is a good thing if you just look at it through the eyes of something that's respectful to do and say. But of course, we've got this political climate, which, like, as you say, people consider it as like us versus them, and it's unnecessary, or like it's telling people that it's not our land, it's their land, and it gets all political. And so all I do is I try to cut through all the bullshit and go, look, these are just words. What's really important is how you as the individual connect to the concepts that lie behind the words so that you can speak from a place of authenticity. That's if you want to. Just bringing it back to, the original intention of what it's supposed to be. So that's a bit of a, I guess, overview of like the cultural climate around the acknowledgement, at least in Australia.
Gotcha. And I guess the word country has a different meaning
Yeah.
in your context. When I think of country, I think of a country, Spain, U.S., Belgium, and or I think of the country, like the rolling hills, or
Out the bush.
the old agricultural town. Yeah, the bush in Australia, right? So, but when you talk like when you write about country in your
Mm.
diary, which you often publish as a newsletter, you talk about country, capital C, as something alive, something that informs you, something you're in relationship with. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little about that?
Yeah. So country, as we learn it, as the word in the Western sense, is just we'll describe it as geographical space and political borders. That's how we get taught with what country is. Um,
Mhm.
but in the blackfellow way, in the Aboriginal way, country is considered geographical space, political borders, plus a spirit. So it's alive and it's conscious and it's aware and it holds lore, Lore. It holds story, and it's also like the country is the thing that teaches, and it's the thing that heals. So it's often depicted as like a mother figure, and this is outside of Aboriginal culture as well. A lot of the hippie women, white women, like to call it Gaia, for example. It's the Mother Earth, right? So when I refer to country, the capital C is referring to the spirit of that country, right? Not just the geographical space, but the heart and the soul of that space.
Gotcha. So I remember a bunch of years ago, I interviewed Tyson Yunkaporta, it's a Australian indigenous thinker and writer, and I kept asking him these questions. And this was very early in my journey on these topics, and I kept asking him like intellectual or conceptual questions, and he kept answering them in a way that just confused and infuriated him. He's like, "Well, do you have a river near you? Go ask the river." And
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I don't know. I'm talking to you. I don't understand. What do you mean? Or it's like have you asked the plants in your garden what they think of that? And it's taking a long time um, for that rain to percolate through the soil of my westernized mind. Do you have some sort of personal examples of like what it means to be informed by spirit of country, by Gaia, by a living consciousness?
You know what you're yeah, it's a really good question, Howie. And like you're reminding me of this meme where there's like the Buddha and the Buddha's like, be here now, right? Be here now. And then all of the followers around Buddha is like, where is that? When is that? How do we do that? Like I'm trying to make a reference to like this way of thinking. Okay, so in the modern world, Howie, we are dominated by the mind, right? We are built into systems, and these systems say to us, here is language. This language is sigils and the glyphs and the spelling. This is why we call it spelling. Okay, and what
Uh-huh.
happens is like our mind is constantly fixated on the next thing. It's the next thing. It's the next thing. Or it's considering the previous thing. And it's not often right there in the middle. It's not often in a present state. So country is a beautiful, I'm not too sure what to call it in this context, like an antenna. It's more like a feeling, and this goes beyond the sigils that we were taught and the language that we use in our minds. But country allows us to bypass that, because what we do, and this is in indigenous cultural thinking, this is the way of being, more like, is that when we make a conscious decision, consciously, I'm going to put my awareness and my attention into country. And by the way, country could be out in the bush, or it could be in your, it could be in your room, it could be at your office. You're still on country, but making the conscious decision of like, well, this is country, and then just allowing it to make you present, like you form a relationship with it. And it's usually at that point that you realize that the thing that you're searching for all the time is actually at your fingertips. It's actually in the present, and it's in the now. And it's okay just to take a moment with country to let that heal you, or let that teach you. Does that make sense
Hmm.
how I explain that?
Yeah. What came to me is like all the obstacles for me to really understand that. So I think it makes sense, and my mind is like, well, but like I'm an individual, and there's something you're talking about that undermines that my perception of myself as like really separate from everything else. That in my sort of readings of indigenous culture, very often that like to think of me as an individual would be to try to understand a cell in my body outside of the context of the other cells.
Mm.
Is there something worth responding to in that?
Are you talking about like how we see ourselves in systems, or how we see ourselves as individuals, or
Well, I guess the system makes me feel like an individual. So, like that cartoon of the Buddha,
mm.
right? Like to be here. Let me see. Let me see if what I'm trying to say is worth saying. Um, that, that the way I have been brought up to think of myself as as an individual in an unconscious, a random world where there is no consciousness, um, dooms me in a way
Mm.
to. Right. I'm not sure. There's again this like one of the feelings I get when I encounter indigenous wisdom from my present state, which is sort of 60 years of marinating in something else, is that I'm always asking questions based on um, inadequate assumptions. So I'm trying to get to something without knowing where I'm going or what it would be like. So I'm trying to conceptualize things that
Okay.
like we're having like it's almost like we're having a conversation and you're trying to explain to me what a pear tastes like, and I've never had a piece of fruit. And I
Mm.
just keep wanting to, give me more words, different words, better words.
Yeah, yeah. So this feeling is, um, the way you're describing it, it sort of reminds me of, and this is a concept from the North Kimberleys. So this is Bunaba language. Bunaba language up in Broome. I forget the mob there now. But they use the word lian, and lian is essentially like spirit, and spirit is like this thing, and it's the lian that sort of moves you and magnetizes you towards things. And sometimes your mind, it's not about the mind, right? It's not about what you understand logically, or consider up here. It's more like they'll say the word lian a lot, like, oh, my lian brought me here, or that's the Leon connection where we overlap, or so there's a concept there that I'm seeing is a bit similar to the way you're describing it.
Well, let me plow ahead and see if we can, if I can begin to pull some threads together to weave
Yeah.
something that can keep me warm. Um, I'll come back to your to sort of the LinkedIn work around and you've shifted, I think, from just sort of acknowledge this to this authenticity, right? That it doesn't matter, the word, the script isn't the important thing. It's what you actually feel and think. So when you're working with an organization that's firmly rooted in sort of the a Western. We're here to to produce something, to make money, and we also have a heart and we want to be responsible, compassionate citizens of the land. How do, how what do you want them to intend? Because it's not right. Like I would cynically say, like, in the land acknowledgements from North America, where I'm from, typically sound something like, "Yeah, this is yours. We acknowledge it, and but we aren't giving it back."
Yeah.
Right? Like it's almost like the acknowledgement is like, you throw a coin into a beggar's cup, so you don't have to deal with their humanity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, oh, what say you?
So so like what the intention is behind like what I do and what is the intention behind the work, say, in this context?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and what's the intention you want
yeah.
other people to have?
So the intention for a lot of my work is to ditch fear. Okay, there's a fear culture which exists, and ironically, that's also the reason why there's a lot of acknowledgements of country that are just there because people feel like they're obliged to or they have to or it's the most progressive thing to do, and sometimes it's presented in the space of fear. So, well, my intention is with the workshops that I run is to first of all name the fear and let's talk about it, right? Because people often don't have the space or they don't know where to start or they don't know how to have these conversations. And I go, well, let's just talk about fear and but then more importantly, how do we find our own sense of courage in overcoming it?
Hmm. What is the fear, or what are the faces of the fear?
Fear of offense. Fear of offense is probably the biggest one. Everybody's scared of saying the wrong thing. Now, they've got it in their minds that there's a right thing. When they think this binary right and wrong, they think, but this is, I just remind people, I go, well, you know, everybody has their preference with what words they want to hear. There's no set amount of words that you can say that's going to please everybody. There's only your way, there's only your words, and those are the words that I'm encouraging you to do from your heart, not from your head, because everyone's up here too much. I just go, well, what's the feeling here? How do you create some words for it? And how do you talk about it? Yeah.
Hmm. So when you say, like, there's no right or wrong, so when I think sort of politically or socially, like, I feel like there's a lot of right and wrong,
Yeah.
right? And like it's almost, like a movie that I've been thinking about lately is the original Avatar, right? Which has this,
Oh,
this
yeah.
indigenous culture, and then the people come to mine it, and with their machines of destruction, and like, that's a clear morality tale. And when I think about, like, growing up in the U.S., we're the greatest country in the world. The world is so lucky to have us, and then beginning to see, to learn real history of what the U.S. did in Guatemala, in Iran, in Honduras, and just everywhere we've been. Um, and it's hard. It's hard for me not to see villains and victims. And when you're talking about, like, a land acknowledgement is almost like people, white fellas. I think my audience might not be familiar with the black fella, white
Lingo,
fella
yeah.
language as something that's not offensive, but simply of country. Um, like how do you how do you deal with, so let's say, my white progressive guilt over being privileged, having huge advantages because of these historical atrocities.
How do I deal with that personally?
Okay. Or how do you think about it? How would you help
Hmm.
if I'm a typical participant in one of your things, and I come
Yeah.
in and I
Oh,
and
yeah.
I and I don't want to give offense, and I want to be on the right side, and I say things like, "Man, white people suck. I'm so
Mm.
sorry."
Yeah. Yep. 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 Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the white guilt thing. No. Okay. I like to be very clear when I talk about this because it's a big subject, and it's got a lot to do with identity, and it's got a lot to do with how people orient themselves to space. And I understand, and I get it. It's political. My philosophy is pretty clear on this. I think that regardless of how you label yourself and what privileges you do or do not have, who you are in the moment is the most important, right? And that's it. And who you are, you can choose to be in the moment. You can choose to be you can choose to be white. You can choose to be, insert, liberal. You can Labor. You can choose to be a footy supporter. You can choose to be all those things in that moment if that's what serves you. But the important thing to note is that I just asked the simple question, does that guilt serve you right now in this moment? Because if it serves you, well, keep it. But if it doesn't serve you, which I think is probably for most people, I would then consider the question, well, who are you now and how do you show up now?
Mm.
Yeah.
So what? So in a system in which these inequalities and injustices have been enshrined, um, how how should allies show up? Should is probably not one of your favorite words,
It's
but,
cool. No, I like this.
but
Okay, that's a good question. Okay, how do you show up? Okay. Hmm. Come as you are. Come as you are. Don't try to perform. Like, don't try too hard. Like, that's another thing. Everyone's trying a little bit too hard, I think. And I can tell you this from Aboriginal, this is a universal concept for all Aboriginal mob from Australia, is that Aboriginal people are more interested in you as a person before they're interested in like the labels that you bring, like the job that you have, for example. So a lot of time,
uh-huh.
you mentioned the word allies, like a lot of people have this self-identified factor where they've now put themselves in this thing of an ally and they go, I'm an ally, which means I got to do X, Y, and Z. And I go, cool, again, if that serves you, but also like if you just come to me as who you are in the moment and you show me your intention and we can have a conversation, then really that's the best piece of advice I think I can give anyone, Howie.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that was my first introduction on your website. It said, so choose your own adventure. Do you want to, my mob wants to
Yeah.
know about personal stuff, and my corporate white audience wants to know about my LinkedIn
Yeah.
bio.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Um, so what happens when you lead a workshop, you do work with a client, and and you're happy with it? Like what ends up being different in that organization or in the people, and how does that contribute to like your vision of the world you're building?
Mm. Is it like what does success feel like, or what does it feel like to do a
Yeah. 'Cause like, for a lot of us who are in the thought leader business, success would be like, oh, they've,
mm,
tripled their
mm, mm,
this, or
mm.
they've opened new this,
Yeah,
right? You're
yeah,
not
yeah,
you're not promising, direct business economic outcome.
yeah.
You're after something larger, more intangible. I would argue more crucial for our survival as a species. Curious what that is.
Okay, yeah, okay. You're hyping it up, Howie, but the answer is pretty simple. Um, it's a feeling. So what success feels like to me, both for me and for the the audience, the people, the participants, whoever that are in a part of the things that I do, is to instill a feeling, and that feeling, if you can, sometimes it's confidence, sometimes it's permission, sometimes it's excitement. Whatever that feeling is, that's the thing that is a successful thing to me. So if it feels good for me and it feels good for you, that's what keeps me doing this thing. So I'm not too much into strategies and into I only got to end of high school. I didn't go to uni or anything like that. So I the thing that is a success for me is when people feel good, and that's also an important thing to remember when you're dealing with the market, is that people forget that the feeling is what it matters. That's what people remember. People don't remember what they teach you, right? This is Maya Angelou who said this, poet. People don't remember what you teach, but they will remember the way that it made them feel. And as a presenter, I'm sure you know as well how you'd agree, when you have a good feeling, that's the thing that you remember, and that's empowered you and your community and your life and your culture. So yeah, it's a feeling for me.
I'm fascinated that you didn't go to uni, and I'm thinking like, how did you get into this? I would love to hear the trajectory of
Yeah,
like,
I'll tell you.
what did you want to be when you were 9 years
Yeah,
old, and
yeah.
how did this happen?
I'll give you all of the lore, and it's on the website as well. I think I put it in seasons. I was like, here's season one, two, three. We're currently in season five. Like, doesn't mean anything, but yeah, this is season we're in. So okay. I'll tell you. Let's do that. Hang on, let me just back up. I get excited. So when I was in high school, I was always into presenting. I was like in all of the musicals, so I like to be in front of people, and I like the feeling. I like the feeling of being seen and seeing, like seeing people being seen. Cool. Yeah, it's a musical. Now, when I finished high school, I went and pursued acting. So I did a certificate in Aboriginal theatre, and this is at WAPA, which is the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts, and this is where Hugh Jackman went. Okay, we always flex that to you Americans. It's like, yeah, that's where I went. You understand? I went to the same place. Yeah. So it's a bit of a flex, but yeah, um, that's where I went, and I studied for a year. So we studied Aboriginal plays and playwrights and music and dance, and it was beautiful. Now, the year after that, I was then in a position where I was 19 years old, and I didn't have too much of a direction because I'm not really, a huge planner. And at this point, I was like, yeah, I like acting. So I was sort of doing a few acting jobs, but it wasn't paying the bills necessarily, and it was a bit of a grind. It was at this point, Howie, when my principal at my old school, um, he got me a job at that high school. So I went back to my high school, and now I'm working there as what was called an EO, Aboriginal Islander Educational Officer. It was my job to support the Aborigines at the school, and that was an easy job for me because half of them I was already related to, right? So it was cool. Now, once I did this for 4 years, this was my introduction to Aboriginal education, and this is when I just started to build myself up and go, well, like, I know what I'm good at. And at that point, I was sort of outgrown the school. I moved off into a university then. So now I'm working with university students, where I'm a part of a program which brings Aboriginal kids onto the campus, and then we recruit and train student volunteers from the campus and pair them up, mentor mentee relationships. And then we go through, like, confidence building workshops and aspirational building workshops, all in an effort to bring the Aboriginal kids into higher education, or encourage them to get into higher education. So once I did that for a couple of years, I then got my ABN, and I then sort of worked for like a little bit of everyone. So I would work as an Aboriginal consultancy organization. I would work sort of, I went out into this, like, there's a local bushland, and there was an organization which they did like bushwalks, and I was like their token Aboriginal that walked through the bush and taught them traditional ways of hunting and fishing and all that kind of thing. These were little kids, by the way. This was like, primary school students. And that was fun, right? Just bringing them out on country and doing that. And then after that, that's when I began the acknowledge this. So I paired up with a change strategist, another American, this woman, Emma Gibbons. And what we did was we brought ourselves together and then we were like, well, we wanted to do something. And we looked at the market and we're like, cool, what's the thing where her and I overlapped? And then we got to acknowledgements of country. And then we found a niche because, nobody's really talking specifically about the acknowledgements of country or giving the context. Now we're the ones given that context, so it became a popular product in the market. More importantly, it resonated a better message to the culture, right? And then yeah, since then we had that business together for a few years, and then the beginning of last year we went our separate ways. I bought her out of the business, and then I rebranded, acknowledged this to Modern Custodian. So yeah, that's how I've gotten to where I am today. Didn't study beyond a certificate for, and if anything, I'm kind of glad for it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, if I could trade the contents of my education for the money I spent on it, I think I'd take the money now.
Yeah, hex debt is what we call it, and it's a motherfucker. Yeah.
So I'm curious how sort of how you grew up. If you're sort of laughingly saying like I was the token Aboriginal showing people
Yeah.
how to like survive in the bush. Like, did you grow up
No,
like with
no,
with
not at
those
all.
skills?
Yeah, no, not at all. I'm the most suburbanized kid ever, right? Like, just think classic '90s kid, with the glasses and the Sega Mega Drive. It was. That being said, we grew up. I can't say poor. I wouldn't say poor, but my parents would probably say, nah, they would say poor. And, just getting by. Like we always had food on the table, but, we were playing with sticks in the yard for a bit there. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm pretty suburban, and the traditional ways of living is like these are just things that you learn over time. So it's not like that was a reality. We weren't hunting kangaroos with spears.
And in your growing up, did like having like so a white Australian father, like Scottish, Irish heritage, um, like what did you learn about yourself? Like, who were you confused about who you were? Was like I read a lot about sort of like I was living in two different worlds and I wasn't fully accepted in one or the other.
Yeah.
It sounds like there was sort of less drama in your origin story,
It's cool.
or was there?
That's a great question. It's a great question, Howie. It's like when you're a kid, they're just your parents, like it's only until later on in life do you realize like the cultural complexities of everything. But within my structure, like within my family, it's just my family, that's just who we are.
Yeah.
That's mum and that's dad. So, it's not like I had to it wasn't like I grew up confused or like, who am I? Because my family was already that support for me anyway. That doesn't mean to say that it wasn't for everyone, but yeah, I had a blessed, growing up, childhood.
Were there a lot of other kids like you with sort of the dual heritage, or were you sort of like
Oh yeah,
floating
yeah.
between different groups?
Oh, for sure, mate. Yeah, like most, I reckon, like, yeah, most blackfellas I know, most Noongars I know, I should say, like from here, like most of them got white heritage along the way somewhere. Um, and that's the other thing as well, is that we don't really put it into percentages here. It's not what we do. Like people aren't going, how people might ask you like how much Aboriginal are you, but Aboriginal people won't ever ask that to other Aboriginal people, like how much are you. So
Oh.
that's the other thing as well, which is kind of worth mentioning here, is like everybody sort of have their own connection to country and identity and place.
Hmm. And did you grow up speaking any Aboriginal languages?
Nah. And like, oh man, the language thing is a whole thing on its own. So for example, the Noongar language here is a language which is being introduced, like reintroduced into the culture, and this is a beautiful thing. They're doing this in schools, and they're encouraging white kids to do it as well. And kaya is the word for hello. Kaya wanju, hello, welcome. They're singing it now, so there's a bit of a revival of the language, the local language here. But that being said, it's interesting as well because the amount of fluent Noongar speakers here, I could maybe count on my hand. You know what I mean? It's not a first language here like it is for, like, let's say other mob.
Mhm.
You go up north to the Kimberleys, and they got hundreds of clans there with hundreds of different languages, and they can have 4 different Aboriginal languages before they know English. But down here in the southwest, English is the first language for sure.
Mm.
And we learn
So,
some of the language, like the language I learned, for example, was never taught in a classroom for me. It was just because I'm in the community, and you hear people talk and you learn things over time. So I'm not fluent now, but I could probably understand quite a lot of what people say.
so, guess I'm hearing about your bio and some of the things you were doing, sort of like encouraging and supporting and providing confidence to Aboriginal kids to enter higher education, which is it's sort of like opportunities and leveling up, and but also like some part of my brain is hearing like it's potentially diluting or erasing cultural heritage, right? Like we're going to send you through the university, the corporate
Mm,
machine. You're going to come out, sort of like equality means everyone is like the dominant culture. And
mm,
I'm curious what is there in place? Like, again, I'm coming from a place of having had just being incredibly disillusioned about the world that I thought I lived in and my place in it, and looking to Aboriginal wisdom, looking to indigenous, um, wisdom traditions to help me navigate. And like what I'm interested in is like not how I can help you, but how you can help me.
So is it like how to reconcile the modern systems with the traditional systems, like what that looks like?
Maybe, or almost like how can like right the modern systems are destroying the earth and creating
Mm,
epidemics of mental health
mm,
calamities,
mm,
and like can we be saved? Are there elements of Aboriginal wisdom that are just desperately needed? So it's not just, okay, we're going to help you go to school and become,
mhm,
to
mhm,
have a nice house in the suburbs like we do, but
mm.
can right. So if you're doing acknowledgement of country, if you're bringing indigenous culture into settler
Mindset.
venues, is you know is there like a positive virus that can get transmitted that can help us just get along as humans?
Yeah, I like this. This is a good question. Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. The best thing that it's like, yeah, what's the antidote, right? I don't know if it's called an antidote. I just think that it would help a lot. And that would be there's a big fundamental difference that I see that is different between like the modern way of thinking and the traditional way of thinking. And the traditional way of thinking oftentimes prioritizes this concept of relationship with the universe, like it's in constant relationship. So in traditional ways, every single thing, every single event, every single sound, every single moment had a story and was connected to something. It was connected to spirit, it was connected to this. And what we do in the modern world is we have lost a lot of that connection, or we seek that connection through other people and influences and algorithms and things like that. So I can see a real beauty when, for example, these two worlds meet is when the teachers at the school that is the system that prioritizes the mind, takes the moment to bring an elder in, for example, to take the kids out on country to go for a walk and then to teach them like what the traditional word is for this and what this means and how you connect to it, because they don't really teach that in the modern systems. They just teach the thing for your mind. I'll give you a cool analogy here, actually. So, for example, you find a lot of knowledge in the language. So the Noongar word for there's a Noongar word, and it's katidjan, for example, katidjan. And what the white fellow way, what they do is they go katidjan means this. So they go katidjan means understanding, and then you'll see things like katidjan means knowledge, and you go okay, and they go no, katidjan means experience. Okay, katidjan means information, and you go what? And the irony is what you got to do is you look at it through the Aboriginal lens. Kat it yin. Okay, so watch this. Kat is your mind. That's your head. That's your brain. That's your conscious. Ich is like the suffix meaning together with, and then yin is the feet. Okay, so it directly translates to heart and together with feet. And you go, well, what does that mean? And you go, no, well, what's happening is that it's explaining that knowledge, understanding, experience, all of these things, it comes from the knowledge and the feet. It comes from the brain to the fingers, to the feet, to the expression of the self, right? So I think like one of the things that the indigenous cultures teach very well is how to create that inversion and how to look at things just through different lenses as well, and how to build relationship with it. Yeah. Anyway, a lot there, but passionate.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love it. So most people listen to this rather than watching it on YouTube, but I do want to ask you about the background. So you've got looks like a two pack poster.
Yes, sir. Tupac. So in Aboriginal culture, Tupac is our messiah. No, Tupac is just no. Well, I really do like Tupac. Because he was a poet, and he was a really good poet, and he studied Shakespeare, and like a lot of people see him as the gangster. And anyway, but I also really like the way that he uses words here, and this is always my favorite quote: realize, realize, realize. Very cool. What else have I got? So this is a relic. I'll teach you about this, Howie. So in Australia, you know, most public schools at some point in the 90s would have had this bloke here, and it was
Condo man.
condom man, safe sex.
Oh,
Okay.
condom man.
Condom man, that's right.
I'm
That's
thinking
right.
of housing. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So it's Condom Man, and Condom Man is, make sure you have safe sex. But he was an Aboriginal bloke superhero, so it's just a bit of
Uh,
nostalgia there. Very important.
okay. And I love the motto, which I did not attach to condoms when I was sort of glancing over your shoulder. It's
Be shame,
don't be shame, be game.
be shame, be game. Very important. Yep.
Which
Um,
that sounds like it could be like the motto for your workshops.
well, then I'll probably get in a few lawsuits actually, because that's, it's definitely theirs. Yeah. But yeah, it's I got some of these books here. Those are the books that written or been a part of, and I like collecting things. So, I've got little jars up there as well with little pieces of country in there, because I like my plants.
Nice. You mentioned green thumb. So what are you growing?
You know, I- I'm strangely obsessed with like the devil's ivy at the moment. So I'm just taking cuttings of devil's ivy and I'm putting them in bottles, and I have maybe 30 bottles at the moment with all of these propagating devil's
Devil's
ivy,
eye.
which
I don't
yeah,
know that term. So
uh, Okay. You know, it's just one of those things that doesn't require soil, and that's why I like it because you can just cut it,
Mm.
put it in water, and it just thrives in water. And I've had them there for months, and now I'm starting, and they creep, so they vine, and they just can grow infinitely, apparently. So in my mind, my studio is going to be like a little fairy kingdom when you come inside at some point. Yeah.
When my kids were little, they loved this picture book called The Salamander Room, which was basically this kid's bedroom ends up turning into a forest, and the tree grows through the ceiling, and
Yeah.
so I get the aesthetic.
Yeah. Like a sage, like a modern sage, you know?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I'm curious about the rebranding to authenticity. What what can
Yes.
you teach us? What can you share about authenticity, and how to get there? Because I feel like even in this conversation, like I'm really curious, and I feel like a part of me is being performative for your
Mm,
benefit, for my
mm,
readers, for my listeners, for myself. Like, I'm the guy who's really going to be respectful and interesting. Like, like there's all these conversations around authenticity just
yeah.
going on inside me all the time.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you for the question, Howie, and the revelation, and really because, in that moment, for example, you displayed a sense of authenticity through vulnerability. Okay. You're like, oh, and vulnerability is courage in disguise, right? So, so I'll give you some context behind like why I'm extremely interested in this word authenticity and what I'm doing with it. It came from Acknowledge This. So Acknowledge This originally, of course, was just the workshop which intended to teach you how to do an acknowledgement of country. That's how it started. But what it's evolved to, because what you realize after years of doing this is you understand that people aren't interested in doing how to do an acknowledgement of country. People aren't interested in more scripts. What people are looking for is permission to be authentic. They want permission to be themselves. And I go, well, what's stopping us? Well, we know what's stopping us: fear, which is the thing we get into, false evidence appearing real. That's what's the thing. And then how do we overcome it, and how do we use courage to say what we mean and say what we want? Here's the other thing as well, is that like it's important to mention, I don't know if you ever arrive at the point, you know, where you go, I am now authentic. Because of course we have masks, like of course we have social masks. That's how we communicate and operate, and it's that's very normal. So it's not about doing the ayahuasca trip and becoming one with nature and God and everyone in the universe straight away. It's just about understanding, your culture and where you sit, understanding that you are the culture. Yeah. You are never separate from it. You are never stuck in traffic. You are the traffic. Right.
Yeah.
And it's just about, speaking from a place which is in alignment with you. Because when we do that, we give others permission to do so, and we give ourselves permission to do so. And that's when we start to see cultures shift. And that's a beautiful thing.
So but there's a lot of archaeology that has to go into, at least for me, around like what's me, what's culture, and of course, yeah, I am the traffic, but I could be the traffic at like 7 a.m. or I could be the traffic at 11 a.m. Like I could, that there's parts of the culture that have sort of that aren't serving me, that have never served me, that serve capitalism, that serve the machine, and make me want to doom scroll, make me want to consume, make me want to continually work myself up into fear, because fear makes me controllable and makes me buy more stuff. How do I begin to separate like the authentic me from the culturally
Mm-hmm.
um, controlled me?
Mm. Yeah, that's a powerful question, Howie. And here's what I would say. Here's what I would think. I would first challenge the concept of a thing making you do something, okay? Because that puts the power in the algorithm or whatever, you know. Like the good news, and this is just the reminder, is that you are in control of yourself. You're not in control of, you know, the big things, you know, like in a direct way. You can't just, you know, shoot a lightning bolt and change things in Africa, but you are in control of yourself, your moment, and your presence, and understand and accept that that is enough, you know, that is enough. And then just make the, I guess, the give yourself an intention or a goal to work towards. So, and that can be that could be like to be your best self, or to shine your brightest light, or to insert, you know, affirmation in there. But I do just remind people that we're oftentimes a little bit harsh on ourselves because we look outwards too often, and outwards is just fear and pain and mistrust and Epstein files and bullshit. And that is all important, and that is all worth talking about. But it's also like you need to just take a little bit of time and space for yourself. You're allowed to slow down for a second and let country do that for you and with you, right? Just take a breath, just go out and go for a walk, you know? Mm. I'm sorry, Howie. I just need to grab a drink of water because I've got something in my mouth. I'm back in a sec, mate.
Sure. So good role modeling of taking care of yourself.
The most important thing to do, Howie. Mm.
I'll
But take
drink to
care of
that.
yourself first before you take care of anybody else, I reckon.
Yeah. So the hour's up. I'll let you get on with your evening.
Having a great time, Howie. I'm in no rush, just so you know.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
yeah, it's mid-arvo here. It's I've still got a bit
Oh,
of
okay.
time
Right.
until the evening, but yeah. But this has been good.
Right.
I'm appreciative of you, Howie. I just got to say, um, it's really an honor to be seen and be spoken to. Because yeah, it's not often that people reach out to me, so I appreciate this conversation, mate.
Yeah, and I'm being watered by it. One of the things you said that sort of stuck in my mind around loving to perform and to see and be seen, like I had that too, and I always repressed it. Like as like you know, I would allow myself to be on stage for very brief moments, and but it was always like, oh, guilty pleasure, right? Like, oh, I want people to applaud because I come from a
Mm.
family of actors, and
Yeah,
the thing I got from them was that they were always trying to be the center of attention, right? Like
yeah,
the joke was, so and so, the way they would, the way they'd be interested in you is by asking you if you'd seen their last play. And so
yeah,
to be able to hear like, okay, so for me wanting to perform, wanting to make people laugh, um, wanting to entertain,
mm,
like
mm,
there's value and virtue in that. And I really, from just spending an hour on your website this morning, just really enjoying the energy of like, let's not make anybody wrong. Like you honor your Aboriginal roots, you honor the Scottish roots, right? Around commitment, around loyalty. Like you're looking for what's good and what's right and what's alive in a lot of different places.
thank you. Yeah, it's um, it's an ongoing journey. It's important is to have fun in the moment as well. That's another thing a lot of people forget, Howie, is making time to enjoy the moment, making time, you know.
Mm.
Everybody says that, like they go, "Oh, I don't have the time. I don't have the time." I go, "Oh, I reckon that's a story you're telling yourself, mate."
Mm. I'll turn that lens on myself
Yeah.
as soon as
Are
we
you
get
having
off the
fun?
call. I think
Are
there's
you
something
having
for
fun
me.
with your practice? Are you enjoying it, mate?
It's a good question. I think I haven't caught. I think my practice has not caught up to my consciousness. Um, I mean, honestly, some of the things I think hold me back are like I want it to be fun all the time, and like there's a whole bunch of things that need to happen in a practice that require sitting down and doing some hard work. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's also important to kind of expand the idea of fun beyond like the pleasure hit of the moment into
Mm.
like putting together a spreadsheet of 20 people to reach out to can lead to like can lead to fun, even though it might not be intrinsically like making me jump for joy.
You know what? I love that you mentioned that because, yeah, you've got the duties that you don't want to do all the time, but you've got to do them. And in that case, I go, well, but you can also change your environment. Like, so I go, I'm going to make my environment fun so I can do a mundane thing. You know what I mean? So that's when I put my
Mm.
music on, I put my candles on, like I change it up, I sit differently and my mind is like, I don't want to do this. But I don't know, the spirit kind of goes, yeah, like again, country, right? This is something that is in
Leon.
there's a bit of balance there.
I like that. Yeah, I think I have opportunities to tweak environment. It's funny. I
Mm,
just published an interview with a trauma therapist
mm,
who, and sort of the history of trauma therapy is that it's pretty traumatizing stuff. For
mm,
like you sit and you like relive the worst moments of your life over and over again with a stranger, and the way
mm.
he does it is. He'll have you activate sort of a micro slice of a memory and then watch your favorite YouTube video. So things like golden retrievers chasing tennis balls in meadows, or your favorite sport, or
Just-
like pizza coming out of the oven. He says like your brain only changes and learns in a positive way when it's having fun.
Yeah, yeah, great. I love that. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's
So
clever.
all right, so so more fun. I've written a lot of notes and various font sizes. I think fun is going to be the largest word on this page.
If you were to, if I was to ask you to stop right now, Howie, and consider the feeling, like what's the feeling? What would the word or words be to describe that feeling?
The one that's coursing through me right now.
Yeah.
Oh, I think there's two. I
Mm.
think they're in some sort of dynamic tension. There's kind of an eagerness and there's kind of a weariness. Um,
Eagerness, weariness.
yeah.
The reason I
When I Yeah, go ahead.
no, the reason this is something I usually ask people, at the end of a conversation or the end of a workshop or whatever, um, because it usually helps to just remember and identify that feeling, like I said, because it's the feeling that we remember and it's not so
Mm.
much the words, I'm feeling gratitude and appreciation, a little bit of contentment as well. And I also feel like I want to move my body a little bit. But
Mm.
yeah, I just thought I'd, bring that up and mention it as well because, yeah, oftentimes, especially after the workshop, right? the facilitators are always doing the thing where it's like, or they'll hand out the review sheets, and how did this do this and
Yeah.
this and this, and it's like it's a cool little thing just to remind people when you're with them in the moment, and just go, hey, like there's a feeling here, because then they'll go, oh yeah, this is what the word is, and then they'll remember it. So yeah, I'm excited for your eagerness.
Yeah.
Is how I would respond.
Yeah. No, and I'm also inspired by, there's a bunch of things you said, and I have, we're recording it, so I don't have to like get everything down verbatim, but there's a clarity, like just ditch fear. Like, I don't know how prominent that is in your marketing. But it feels like it's the title of this episode.
Yeah, cool. Cool.
And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just, it's such a simple, powerful reminder. It's just like a little, sigil of a sort of a psychic tattoo. Like just look at my wrist and go, ditch fear. Like, what do I do here? Ditch fear. Like 99.9% of the time, that's like a really good prescription.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm glad that's I'm glad that's how it's reflected. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. How do people find you, stay in touch with you, learn more?
Oh, man, you got to send me a smoke signal.
Yeah.
You can reach me if you just type in Modern Custodian anywhere, then that's me. So Modern Custodian is my website. I've only got LinkedIn and Instagram though, so I don't have anything else yet because I refuse to get onto TikTok, Howie. I'm not doing TikTok. I'm not doing it. I swear, I'm not going to do it.
Hold that for 2 more weeks, and something else will be big.
Yeah. So Instagram or LinkedIn, or you could just type in my name on LinkedIn as well. But anything Modern Custodian is me.
Okay, and I definitely recommend that people grab a mug of their favorite beverage when they check out your newsletter, which they can find in Modern Custodian. It's unlike any newsletter I have come across online, and it's worth pausing and perusing over.
Yeah, I appreciate that, mate. That's very meaningful. And also as well, I do run Acknowledge This every few weeks on Zoom as well. So if you're interested in acknowledgements, anything acknowledgement of country related in Australia, then that's where you can find me.
Okay. Would those not from Oz find value in it?
Well, I think that if you want to understand the economy of an acknowledgement of country, let's say from the Australian perspective, if you want like all of the context, how it works, operates in Australia, why it's there, how many, and if you want to learn more about this whole concept of fear, and this is the main thing, right? It's how we overcome fear of scripts, then it might be palatable to your American market, sure.
All right, very good. One last question, which I wrote that the first word I wrote down before we even started recording was custodian, and it's obviously your key noun. What's a custodian?
A custodian is somebody who takes responsibility for something. Okay, so modern custodian, modern is someone who is in the present, who is right now, and has a responsibility for something. So it's not a title, it's a posture. Okay, like you're a modern custodian, Howie. We're all modern custodians. But yeah, the custodian and custodianship, it's sort of like a steward. It's somebody who says, this is mine, I am responsible for it. Could be my emotions, could be my household, could be my family, could be anything. But that's the custodian within all of us.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I hear twin themes of responsibility and agency in that word.
Yes, and presence, being modern, being here, being now.
Present.
Not then, not in the future, but now. Now is important.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Rhys Paddick. Thank you so much. It's been as I check in with the emotion around this connection. It's definitely gratitude and a sort of a rising. It's it's getting to be spring here in the Northern Hemisphere, and sort of feeling like the rising to meet it. And you've given me some language and energy, with which will help me do that.
Okay, well, I'm gonna say Dabakan Korling Yay, Dabakan Korling Yay. So Dabakan in Noongar is slowly, that's what it means, slowly. Korling is going, so it's like you're going slowly. And yay is the word for the now. It's the word for presence, which I love. Yay, yay. So what I've
Yay.
done on Dabakan Korling Yay, which is go slowly, be present. So this translates to the most Australian proverb that I can think of, which is take it easy. All right. So take it easy, Howie.
Okay,
Take it
so
easy.
I was just listening to the Eagles last night.
Oh yeah.
So
So
don't
you're a
let the
man of
sound of your
culture.
own wheels drive you crazy.
Yeah, well, cheers, Howie. Anytime, mate, reach out. I'm excited to see
Awesome.
what this, and yeah, cheers, mate. Appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you too, Rhys. Thank you so much.
Bye, brother.